Good morning, everyone, and happy Wednesday. My name is Alexis, my pronouns are she, her, and I am the Education and Digital Programs Manager here at Campfire, Minnesota. And we are so excited to have you all join us virtually today. Thank you for being here. I wanted to kick this webinar off with a quick introduction into who we are. Campfire, Minnesota is a youth development nonprofit dedicated to catalyzing growth through nature. Part of our mission is to help provide accessible nature-based experiences. We do this through the investments we are making to our infrastructure, our program offerings, and financial aid with youth who are attending our summer and school break camps, and to our schools who partner with us for environmental educational field trips, in-class visits, and out-of-school time programs. Currently, to meet the demands of our students and our educators, we have developed socially distant in-person and virtual programming, which are all connected to the Minnesota K-12 academic standards. You can learn more about our program offerings for the 2020-2021 academic year on our website, www.campfiremn.org/education/K-12. In just a few moments, you will hear from our naturalists, the team who work directly with our youth, and they are going to lead you in an engaging session of programming. They are currently on our 103-acre property that we call Tanaduna, which was founded in 1924. Our big woods, wetlands, prairie, and shoreline along Lake Minnewaska provide a wilderness experience perfect for year-round outdoor exploration. As Campfire, Minnesota occupies this property, we do want to acknowledge we are on native land belonging to the Dakota people, who are the original and rightful stewards of the grounds. We cannot ignore the long-standing history that has brought us to reside on this land. Colonialism is ongoing, and it is critical that we continually think about what it means to occupy space on Indigenous land and stay mindful of our present interactions with our environmental educational programming, camp programming, and other gatherings that we have at Tanaduna. Now, I would like to pass this part of the session over to 2 of 4 of our naturalists, Caroline and Kelly. And after that, you will hear from our other 2 naturalists, Chris and Sam. And at the end, we'll be sure to wrap up with a Q&A session about anything that you may have questions on as we go through the programming. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and that our naturalists will ask for your participation via the chat function. So please be sure to change your chat responses and set it to all panelists and attendees. You can do this by navigating over to your chat feature and selecting the All Panelists and Attendees option. So get excited because our naturalists are about to give you a sneak preview of our programming.
Awesome. Hi there. My name is Caroline and I use she, her pronouns.
And my name is Kelly and I use she, her pronouns.
And we are 2 of the naturalists at Campfire, Minnesota. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We are in our teaching kitchen at Tanaduna, here to share with you a little bit about our teaching kitchen and garden programs. So with this programming, we focus on 3 goals, and these are growth, creation, and community, each with different objectives that match different grade levels.
Exactly. So for elementary schoolers, we like to start out with the idea of growth. That's teaching them the basics of how our food and plants grow, what's necessary for them to grow. We learn the differences between fruits and vegetables, and we like to start getting our hands dirty in the dirt.
Awesome. Yeah. And then as we move on to a little bit older grade level, we think more about creation, and that is taking that produce that we grow in the garden, learning all of those things in the garden, and then really bringing it into the teaching kitchen and creating recipes and meals together.
And then finally, for older students, we learn about those things as well, but we expand it and focus on community. That's basically how community plays a role in the food that we eat, as well as learning the history of the food system, how a lot of our farming began on with enslavement of Black people to the current inequities in access to fresh and healthy foods.
Awesome. So, and then we are going to finish up after sharing a little bit of all of that programming by sharing a chili that we made from all of the ingredients in the garden right in front of us.
So we will begin right now by playing a game that we would play often with elementary schoolers. This game is called, Is It a Fruit or Is It a Vegetable? It's a little bit harder than it sounds, so I want all of you to play along with us. The game is pretty simple. Basically, we name a fruit or vegetable from our garden, and you have to decide whether you think it's a fruit or a vegetable. If you think it's a vegetable, and if we were playing on Zoom, you put your hand on your head, just like this. If you thought it was a fruit, you tap your nose, just like this. And if you thought maybe it's both, you both tap your head and poke your nose, just like this. Now, since we can't see you on this webinar, we'll have you as the audience type in either F, V, or B for both, depending on whether you think it's a fruit, vegetable, or both.
So, all right, yeah, so let's get started. We're gonna start with the delicata squash. So if you think it's a vegetable, you would tap your head or put V in the chat box. If you think it's a fruit, tap your nose or put an F in the chat box. And if you think it's both, do a B. All right, so we're seeing tons of V's.
V, V, V.
I think it's all around. So, a squash, we can think of a fruit as all of the structure on a plant that holds all of the seeds. So if you can imagine the inside of the squash, if we were to open it up, there would be tons of seeds inside of it. So any plant that holds seeds is actually a fruit. So squash are fruits.
Wow, that one, when I learned that one actually surprised me as well. So that's a fruit. Let's move on to our next one. We have here from our garden, a carrot.
So in the chat box, do a V, F, or B. All right, we've got another V, lots of V's.
Yep, be sure your chat setting is set to all attendees.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the carrot, you're all right in saying that it is a vegetable because we can think of a vegetable as all of the other parts of a plant that don't hold the seeds. So the leaves, the stalk, and even the roots are vegetables. So this is actually a root vegetable.
And finally, we have here the tomato. Tomato. Do you think it's a fruit, vegetable, or both?
Right, we've got a lot of F's, a B.
B.
Another B, awesome. So those of you that said both were correct. This story is kind of wild. So back in the late 1800s, the tomato actually went all the way to the Supreme Court because farmers and tax collectors were fighting over whether a tomato was a fruit or a vegetable. Farmers saying it's got all the seeds inside, it's botanically a fruit, and other people saying, well, I put it on my salad, so it's a vegetable. And up that the Supreme Court sided with the salad idea and called the tomato a vegetable. So by law, it is a vegetable, but botanically it's a fruit. So we like to say that it's both.
Yes. All right, thank you so much for playing that game. That's a game that kids can learn from, but I also think adults and the educators as well will learn from that game. So next, with some more older kids, we move on to a lesson on sustainability. So we would ask the students, have you ever heard the term sustainability? And what does sustainability mean to you? At Campfire, sustainability is when you only use renewable resources to the point that they're able to regenerate themselves.
Yeah, and so we would go into an example of how we practice sustainability here through farm to table, really in that creation aspect of our programming. And farm to table is a concept that was started by Booker T. Whatley in the 1970s, and he was a Black farmer and pioneer for sustainability. And he said that he felt that people were really missing that aspect of knowing their farmer. A lot of people go to the grocery store, don't know where their food is grown, and he thought that part was really missing from people's lives. So, so we started this concept of farm to table, and we would really go into that with the youth.
Exactly. And then we're going to play another interactive game with you very quick. I want you to think, as an audience, about a can of beans. So I want you to think of a can of beans you get from the grocery store, and I want you to think of every single step that it takes to get that can of beans from in the ground to in your hand. Okay, there's a lot of different steps. So in the chat box, if you could just list one step that it takes to get the beans from in the ground all the way to the grocery store in the can in your hand. And as you start putting those comments, awesome, transportation, yes. Keep thinking of those, and Alexis has a image to show, if it will work on the screen, of the life cycle of a can of beans.
Yeah, so we can look at all the steps that go into this process. A lot of it being transportation, going to different manufacturing facilities, going to the grocery store before it gets into your hands. And then what we would do is we compare that to our experience of really getting to just go to the garden, grab our plants, and bring them directly to the kitchen. And ask youth to critically think about the ways that we get our food and how we can do that more sustainably when we have the opportunity to.
Exactly. Thanks for showing that, Alexis. And one of the other pieces of that, of course, is the idea of the inequality of access to that healthy foods. So especially with the older kids, we would be talking about where do those inequalities exist and why do they exist? Lack of transportation, where you live, lack of education, lack of free time, and all of those different factors play in to why some people and not everyone has access to this farm-to-table, fresh, healthy produce. And we'd also start working with the students on how we can start getting rid of some of those factors and how we can, as a community, start building those bridges.
Yeah, so we recognize that this is a very privileged concept to be able to do, and really just want to critically think about ways that we can make it more accessible for everybody. So finally, we just wanted to share with you, this is one of the recipes that we created. It's a veggie chili made from jalapenos, squash, green peppers, carrots, basil, all grown in the garden. And what we would love to do is eventually get to a point in time down the road with COVID and such, in a healthy way, being able to really cook these kind of meals with youth and share them together and share that experience of eating a meal together.
Yes, so I want to thank you all so much for participating today. Obviously, we love what we do. We love what we get to teach about. So we're really glad, and we hope that you learned a little something today.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly and Caroline, for walking us through such a wonderful lesson. Up next, I do want to pass it along to our other two really awesome naturalists who are actually outside on our property, Chris and Sam, and they're going to teach us just as exciting information in here in just a few moments. So if we could have Sam join us, awesome.
Hey. Hi, everybody. My name is Sam, and my pronouns are she, her.
Hi, my name is Chris, and my pronouns are he, his. Today we are out, like Alexis said, at Tanaduna on the property at one of our many wetlands.
Yeah, so this wetland is actually a forest swamp, and the reason it gets its name is because, as you can see, we are in a forest, and at the bottom of this forest is a ton of water collecting. So for our portion, we're going to be doing a little bit of Q&A as well. We're going to ask for some responses. You don't have to respond if you don't want to. But yeah, so what makes this big guy so special, or other wetlands that we have on the property or in Minnesota? Can anybody think of the purpose or importance of a wetland? Clean water. Yeah, nature. Awesome. Yeah, so on the lines of clean water and habitats, the wetland acts as kind of a natural filter. It's nice in between a lake or a river onto land. It carries all of those super important nutrients to help promote growth. It's also super important because, as you know, Minnesota is super popular for growing wild rice. And this guy right here, so important for wild rice because of how wet it is. And wild rice needs a lot of moisture to be able to grow properly. Yeah, so now I'm gonna ask Chris to take it away, talk a little bit about the plants and animals in the wetlands.
So every living thing, every plant and animal needs water. So we're in luck because wetlands, like we said, have a ton of water. So we can find a really diverse range of animals and plants that hang around here. Animals like deer and raccoons can often be seen on the banks of this wetland getting a drink, And wetlands are also known as nature's nursery because a lot of animals, like toads or mosquitoes, spend the first stages of their lives in wetlands. But it's not just animals. Again, we have plenty of plants, like some of these plants that grow right on the surface of the water. I don't know if we can see that. This is called duckweed. So its plant grows right on the surface of the water, and it's important in attracting pollinators like birds, butterflies, and bees. And on the shore of the wetlands, we have that really, really nutrient-rich soil, which allows for plants like this jewelweed to grow. So because our wetlands are so diverse with animals and plants, every trip to a Tanaduna wetlands, you're going to be able to find something new.
Yeah, so now that we've talked a little bit about why wetlands are so important and so necessary for plants and animals, can anybody think of why somebody wouldn't want a wetland to be on or around their property? We've lost half of our wetlands since 1850, and that's a huge, huge problem because of bugs. Bugs is an important factor, yep. So a lot of urban developers want to create highways, freeways, sidewalks, and houses. And when there's a giant wetland like this right in the way, they want to drain that. They want to make sure that they have a flat surface, nothing's wet, so they can start over. And then for agricultural reasons, farmers don't want to have that in the middle of their field because then that space that they're losing to then grow corn, soy, and all of that good stuff. So yeah, now that we've gotten all of that, all these awesome facts about wetlands, we're just going to talk for a minute about how we would adapt to that for different age groups.
Yeah, so we wanted to get students out here to show them the wetlands, why they're so cool and why they're so important. So for younger students, we could focus a lot on plants and animal adaptations or species identification. So what makes one plant different from another? What's that animal? What's this animal? And for older students, we can talk about the different types of wetlands. So what differentiates a bog from a swamp, and what kind of classifies those, and where can we expect to find those different types of wetlands? So there's a ton to talk about out here, and we're really excited to get some students out here. So we hope to see you guys out here soon, and we'll toss it back to Alexis.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. I don't know about you all, but I sure learned a lot from Caroline, Kelly, Chris, and Sam today. Thanks, naturalists. The youth are going to love learning all about nature from you all this academic year. And so before we close out, we do want to open the chat to any questions that you all may have about programming here at Campfire, Minnesota. So you could either use the Q&A option or drop any question that you do have in the chat. Again, we are offering virtual programming as in a similar format that you would see here in this webinar today, and in-person socially distant programming. So if there are any questions about where to find more information, I'm going to go ahead and put the website in the chat box. So we do have one question is, will a recording of this be available? And yes, we are recording right now, and it will be available. We will be sure to send it out to you all via email in the coming days, and it will also be available on our YouTube channel. And so we are really excited to share this knowledge so that way other educators who may not have been able to be part of this today, if they were teaching or if they were in a meeting, can see all of the incredible programming that we do have available. So I went ahead and put the website in the chat, and I'm going to also put my email in the chat, as again, I am the Education and Digital Programs Manager here at Campfire, Minnesota, and I will be able to answer any additional questions that you do have about programming, whether that's scheduling in-person field trip, socially distant field trip, or any of our live sessions. We also have pre-recorded options. So for folks who are adapting to independent distant learning for the days that they may be in a hybrid model, we do have PDFs available with lesson plans and videos that are accessible for students to still get outdoors, whether that's in their backyard or at a local park. So I will leave just a couple more seconds for any questions that we do have in the chat. Otherwise, I will say thank you so much for joining us today. And we do want to thank each and every single one of you for your participation, and our naturalists for all of their hard work that they put together in educating us and educating our youth for future generations to come. So I dropped my email and my website in the chat. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, everyone. Take care and goodbye.